Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi there, I'm Anita Alvarez. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, stay tuned to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned for the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned for the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, Sweet Hope, Chicago.
Hi there, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show. By the way, I'd like to introduce you to one of the nicest people around, Anita Alvarez, doing a show with Avi Myers. Thank you. And thank you, Anita, for the great scissors.
Thank you, Marty, and I definitely have to agree that that was the best Hi on Marty Levinson of all time, inscribed in the permanent Hall of Fame of this show. And we've actually had judges today talk about how they wish they could be here because they were wondering if our next guest might have something new in store. But in any event, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the best Hi on Marty Levinson person of all time. And I want to give special thanks to Dan Kirk and Sally Daly Hunt. And I'm sorry, the other two people here, I don't remember your names offhand, but thanks. Anita Alvarez, our state's attorney. How are you?
Okay, Avi, thanks.
Sure, and I thought that was great that Marty went out for you like that.
Oh my God, it's awesome. What a way to kick off my campaign season, right? With an endorsement from Marty. That's great.
It works. And you know, I can't begin to tell you, there's so many times when I'm in the barbershop, and that subject just comes up of you with the really big scissors, which we did here before, you know, in the beginning of the show so people can see it again. So you've got a really tough primary race.
It's nothing like the last one, right, Avi? No, we're really happy. We're really happy that we're entering this campaign unopposed. But I feel very strongly on my record and everything that I've done as Cook County State's Attorney, so it's a good feeling.
Yeah, you had 4 very serious opponents you defeated last time.
I did. It was really quite the election, and you followed us, and you had us all here, I think.
Definitely, we did.
We did, right, and it was great. And I'm very happy that the election turned out the way it did, and now I've been able to continue to do the job that I love.
And that, you know, for those people who don't know, you were actually the number 3 person in that office for a number of years before.
I was. Yes, I was before I decided to enter politics and to run.
So, I mean, you already knew what was happening. You were partially in charge, not that you were the real boss. So how have you been, well, first of all, in the light of the budget cuts and whatever else is going on, and I'm sure this is affecting more than we can even think of, because that also means, like, response time is less employees from the various other state agencies also.
Absolutely. You know, that people always ask me, what's the hardest part? What has been the hardest part, or maybe the most challenging since I became the elected? And I have to say, by far, the budget. You know, because we have taken a hit these last 2 years, and actually, it started actually in 2007. Little by little, we started to lose employees. And the last budget was probably the hardest hit we've ever been. And to lose 73 of our administrative employees,
wow,
for us it's just it's a big loss because we do so much. And you know, the office is so big, 850 attorneys, and we cover the entire county. You know, losing that many people really has affected us, and that is by far the biggest challenge that I've been faced with, is that budget.
It's like 8.5% to 9% of your workforce.
Yes, it was terrible, and we're feeling it. We're really feeling it now that we lost so many people, and I'm talking real bodies, not open positions. These were actual, you know, real bodies, people who were working for us sometimes as much as, 12, 15 years. And so it really, it's disheartening, and it's difficult now as we're trying to regroup and to reorganize. But for example, in our appellate division, where we handle all of our appeals, not other offices don't. We're the only office in the state that does, but we're the biggest one, so we have a lot. we're down to one administrative person who does all the docketing, which really is very difficult for one person to do that, to handle all of the volume that we have with our appellate work. So right now we're kind of trying to reorganize and restructure, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this year with all the appellate judicial openings, I've had a number of people here who are appellate judges or running for judge, and we've gone into detail. I never realized how much is involved in that sort of thing. So one person for all that, and they're doing like, wow.
Right, yeah, it's a lot. So that has probably been my biggest challenge, but I have been able, I think, to really, make good on all my campaign promises. You know, we've done some real exciting things in these last 3 years, and I'll highlight some of them for you, but
Sure.
It's been great. It's been great. When I first took over, many people were wondering, was I going to make changes? Was I just going to, I think one of my opponent's commercials last time was, I was just going to be status quo. Well, I haven't been status quo, and I made lots of changes when I took over, not just personnel-wise, but really in the way we do things. And so,
Was that your Republican opponent?
no, it was actually one of my Democratic opponents.
Oh, interesting.
which is interesting. But my Republican opponent said the same thing as well. But
It's interesting. His initials are TP.
right, that's correct. But once I took over and we really started looking at all the violence that unfortunately we keep seeing, and we keep seeing the shootings. And even though overall, there have been reports that overall crime is down, we just last weekend there were 14 shootings, and so the number of shootings, there may not all be fatalities, but the number of shootings have increased, and the number of cases that we have seen, particularly in our south suburban courthouses in Bridgeview and Markham, have increased dramatically. So even if maybe the city overall numbers are down, they have picked up in the suburbs.
Well, let me ask you, is some of it, because there's ways to color statistics. I mean, I think Harry Truman said there's 3 kinds of lies. There's little lies, big lies, and statistics. So, Sonny and I are both involved in the CAPS program, and we're big on it. But, I remember one time one of the officers in my beat walks in with the crime report, and he says, I am not going to insult you by telling you that crime is down, because we all have eyes and we see what's going on in our streets right now.
Right.
So, I mean, are you finding that there's more crime, not just in the city, but throughout the county right now?
Yeah, I believe so. And so maybe it's shifted a little bit, maybe a little less in the city, but then we're seeing it pick up, in the suburban areas. So for us, the amount of cases have stayed the same or gone up. So we are really not seeing less cases coming into our office. So, the violence, the guns, one of the first things that we looked at were the gun laws. There were several gun laws that I put forth down in Springfield. Some of them obviously didn't pass, but one that I'm very proud of is the Valadez law. And that is named after Chicago police officer Alejandro Valadez, who was gunned down in 2009. And while he was responding, ironically, to a call of shots fired. That particular law focused on known gang members found on the street with a loaded weapon. And it used to be a probationable offense. Now it's mandatory pen time. And we have seen that law really take effect. And we're actually seeing the offenders pleading guilty as opposed to opting for trial. So we're very happy with the amount of people that, with the amount of cases that we've been able to put together under that law. And so that's something that I'm very proud of. The other focus I talked a lot about during the campaign was really trying to do our part to really, help the community with their relationship with law enforcement. And, there's a distrust there in many communities, and I think we all have a duty to do our best to try to do something to help that and regain that trust. So I talked a lot about my community offices. We closed them in 2007, again, due to budget constraints.
Yeah, you had opened one over here. We were really excited.
Right. So I was able, as of now, I was able to open 4 of those neighborhood offices. The first one was up here, on like Foster in Western, in that area, was our first one. And then we opened the second one out south. And the third one was in Oak Park, right on the border there, between the Austin community and Oak Park. And then the fourth one we just opened this past summer, and that's centrally located. It's over by UIC campus. And those community prosecutions offices, I changed the name to Community Justice Centers.
Oh, cool.
And we're very happy because the community is happy to have them there. It's easy access to our office, and the assistant state's attorneys who are assigned there, many times it's just a matter of answering some quality of life questions and issues. You know, everything doesn't have to turn into a criminal case, and a lot of times people don't know where to go. They don't want to go to 26th Street. They don't want to go to a police station, and they can come in and they can talk to us, and we will help them. And part of those community justice centers, we were able to secure a grant from the federal government to focus on mortgage fraud. Because obviously with the economy, we have seen an increase in those types of frauds and cases, and particularly seniors getting, you know, really defrauded of their homes. And so we were able to secure that grant, and part of the requisites of that grant was to put an assistant state's attorney in our community offices. So we have a mortgage fraud assistant state's attorney in each office, and we've had some great cases that really came about where people walked in, you know, with their paperwork and saying, I've got this issue on the south side. This poor woman walked in, and basically she was being re-victimized because she was in foreclosure. Her and her husband were out of the house, and someone just decided, our defendant just decided to move in, change the locks, and then he started renting out her house.
Wow.
He filed a phony quitclaim deed, and so it was like being victimized again. You know, you're going through foreclosure, you're going through some bad times, and then this happened. So, but she walked in with all her paperwork, and we were able to build a case from that. So I'm very happy with our community offices. They're doing a lot of great work, and the communities that they're in, I wish I could open more. Obviously the budget is always a concern, but they're doing great.
So that means, like, even though it's a different police district, do the people from this neighborhood, can they go down to, like, Western Avenue?
Sure, they can. They can, you know, and the assistants will be able to help them, or at least, you know, hook them up with the appropriate people that can.
Yeah.
So
I know one person who was there. I don't know if it was when you were state's attorney, but I noticed that they were more personable than you would find the average person to be. In other words, whoever put them there understood that this is somebody who can deal with the public in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, it's intimidating when you have to go to a courthouse or a police station. So hopefully people feel a little more, you know, less intimidated by coming and talking to us, you know, in the community justice center. So we're very happy about that. The other thing that we really focused on, and I focused on once I took over, when I started to look at the issue of human trafficking. And that's something people always think that's an international thing. That doesn't happen here. You know, it happens in this country or that country, but not our country. And we looked at how we, as local prosecutors, handled those types of cases. You know, a young child, you know, 12-year-old girl would get picked up and charged with the juvenile prostitution. And what would happen? You know, she may spend a couple days over in the juvenile detention center, but the guy who really is putting her out there on the street, the guy who's making money, nothing really ever happened to him. And so I think we were very ineffective in the way we were handling those types of cases, and really not convicting the bad guy. So we took a look at that and how we traditionally handle them, and realized that this is not the way to do it. We have to change this. So what we did was we changed the law, and I'm very, very happy. And I'm very happy that we were able to pass this with one try down in Springfield, because Avi, you know how sometimes
That's pretty good, one tries. Maybe that's unusual.
It is unusual. But, you know, when you're focusing on children and the issues on children, I think obviously that hits home to everyone, no matter where you are or where you live in the state. But what we did was we changed the law. It's the Illinois Safe Children's Act. And that law does so much, and it does so much for us as prosecutors, because the first thing we did was we took out the words juvenile prostitution. You know, we actually decriminalized juvenile prostitution because, you know, and I'm a mother of 4, and no one's going to tell me that a 12-year-old girl is doing this on her own because she wants to, or, you know, and it's not just girls, it's boys as well. So what we did was focusing on these kids are victims themselves, and we need to get them the services, the social services that they need, the long-term help that they need. So now what we do is we have a social service provider within our office, which is the first time we've ever had that in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. And in cases, if a child gets picked up, they are referred and they're given the services that they need. This law also gives us a real key tool as prosecutors, and that is it gives us the ability to do wiretaps on these types of operations, these types of cases. In the past, we never had that ability. And if you think about it, it's kind of backwards because we've always had the ability to use wiretaps for people selling drugs, but not for people selling children. And that's
interesting.
You know?
Do you find sometimes that the law is just, because, sometimes I think about the people writing it, because I know some of the crew in Springfield, which has got to be a hindrance to, in a lot of ways, but does the law often get in the way of what you're trying to do?
Absolutely, because, here's something, you look at it and you're like, you're not being effective, in tackling this crime. And then you look at the law and you're thinking, well, maybe it's because the law isn't helping us here. So we changed the law, it passed with one try down in Springfield, the Illinois Safe Children's Act. And with that, in those tools, we've already charged 58 defendants.
Wow.
And we had a big operation back this past summer in August. Little Girl Lost was the name of the operation, and we had been working on that for a year. And we charged 10 defendants with the trafficking. Again, and it's so the public is listening. Trafficking of young girls, all here. Here for the most part on the west side of the city, but nothing international here. It's all local.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, just to get back to the law thing real quick. So basically, in order to do something, this isn't even a question of right and wrong. I mean, anybody who's got a half a brain in their head, or even a tenth of a brain, understands that this is bad. This is not only bad, this is evil.
Right.
I mean, really evil. But in terms of, people, what strikes me is, because I was down Clark Street yesterday at the right time or wrong time, whatever you want to say, and I saw some interesting people doing trade that were fairly young. And I would imagine that even though it's not the West Side, there's a possibility that these people themselves might be a victim of that. So for the guy driving around the car who's, with whatever intent, I mean, should realize that, he's helping out these, he himself is helping victimize somebody who's a victim themselves, not to mention the evil where the money is actually going.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're really happy with that new law, and it's gotten national attention. We've had other states come and talk to us about their particular laws. I know Massachusetts just passed one. Ohio reached out to us. They're modeling their new laws after ours, and so we're real proud of that. We're really happy with that, and so we want to continue to be able to work up more cases and hopefully help a lot of young children that find themselves in this horrible position.
Yeah, that's a big thing, not a little thing. I couldn't imagine the horror somebody's in. I mean, I used to pick up my aunt and uncle at the old Greyhound station, and I used to see all the kids, the runaways, and I mean, there was like more evil per square foot there than, I'm glad that station is no longer around. Well, let's get back to what you're doing.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about it.
Oh, well,
You're a fount of information.
We're doing so much, Another focus that obviously I've always had is the public corruption angle, and even though there were critics wondering, was I going to do anything in that regard? But we've done a lot. And through our Special Prosecutions Bureau, we've done a lot. We've had a focus on these smaller municipalities and the issues that they deal with. We charged several people from our what we called Operation Cookie Jar, getting your hand caught in the cookie jar.
Nice name. Do Dan and Saley come up with those? Or?
That one I think I came up with. They gave me a couple of suggestions, and I said, I like cookie jar. Everybody knows what that means. But we've had, people stealing, funds that were earmarked for children with special needs, defrauding their local municipalities out of a lot of money. And we all know that with those local municipalities, $200,000, $300,000 is a big deal for them. So we have stepped up our efforts as far as public corruption goes, and we're going to continue to do that. And so that is something that, again, has always been a focus and will continue to be a focus. There's other cases too. I can't tell you everything we're working on.
No, I understand. And by the way, you actually had entered into I didn't realize you were doing that. I've got an alderman in mind I'll mention to you off the air.
So we're going to continue to do that with the public corruption angle. There's so much going on in our office. Domestic violence, that is an area that I talked a lot about during my campaign. And as a young assistant state's attorney, I spent a lot of time in domestic violence. So it's near and dear to my heart. And but again, that's a courtroom that I always say is a special courtroom. It's not the same as any other courtroom you're going to work. Sometimes assistant state's attorneys burn out, and it's easy to do that when you're working with those types of cases, because the victims need so much more than what we see in other cases. There's so much more involved. But one of the things with domestic violence that I thought was extremely important, you want to make sure that the people assigned to those courtrooms, the assistant state's attorneys, the investigators, that they really are trained the best. And so what we did, the advocates in the domestic violence community have what they call a 40-hour training, and it's really a comprehensive training. And all the advocates, if you're a domestic violence advocate working in this area, you have to go through that training. And so I thought it would be a great addition to our office to have every one of our assistant state's attorneys, our investigators, and our victim witness specialists to also have that 40-hour training, which is, again, something that the advocate community has been doing for years. And so at this point, I think we trained about 150 employees for my office. That's a combination of assistants and investigators and victim witness people they've gone through that 40-hour training, which has been great. And the other good thing is that it bridges the gap too between us and the advocate community, because sometimes there's a little tension. Sometimes we're not always going to agree sometimes, and whether a case it should be charged or how it should be handled. But I think it's really gotten the relationship at a better level. And so we're going to continue to do that. And that was one of my promises when I was on the campaign trail. So I'm very happy that we've done that.
Sounds good. One of the things I do want to ask you about, and this is, I don't want to spend a real long time on it, but running the CAPS meetings in my neck of the woods, and Sonny does too, we run into like the people who watch TV, maybe Law and Order, who think like things really work that way. and like we used to have one cop at the meeting who would like nudge me and go, she watches Law and Order, ask her afterwards. So, how close is any of the real TV to what really goes on?
You bring up a really great point, Avi, because we have, I would say in the last 10 years, it's kind of a joke sometimes between the assistants, trying cases that, it's the CSI effect. The CSI effect.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is that sometimes we're seeing jurors expecting there to be a fingerprint or expecting that there has to be DNA. And DNA, you cannot work up DNA in 30 minutes, okay? It's not, and you're not gonna, I could sit here and touch this table. That doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get my print. And so we've had to deal with that where we know it's the same thing, right? People are watching these shows. They think that this is reality, that yes, the crime lab can work something up in 30 minutes, and that you can get, a fingerprint off of whatever you touch. And that's just not reality. So we have found it a little more difficult for us to continue to explain, what occurs, and like we have to keep reminding the state, the jurors that this is not TV. This is not a TV show. It's not a movie. It's reality. It's Chicago.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm curious about, because when anybody reads or talks about the word DNA, it's like holy grail. Automatically, this person must be guilty because DNA was X, Y, and Z. But just because there's DNA there, isn't it a little more complicated than that?
It's much more complicated, and everybody seems to think that it's the end all. If someone else's DNA is found, oh, well, then this person didn't do it. Not necessarily so. There's a lot of explanation as to how, to the DNA. and then obviously the statistics and the level of it. It's not the end all. It really isn't. And there's plausible and reasonable explanations sometimes for a person's DNA to be on something. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the murderer. We have to have much more evidence than that. and unfortunately, we've seen the difficulty with that. But one thing I do want to mention is I had the utmost honor of arguing a case before the United States Supreme Court.
Cool.
And just in December. And I have to tell you, even though I'm a very seasoned trial attorney and I've tried hundreds of cases, this was much more difficult than anything I had done. It was the level of preparation that I had to do to get me to that point was just tremendous, and it really was intense, the whole experience. And it was an issue concerning a DNA expert, and it was a confrontation clause issue. But it was really an honor to do it. It's such an awesome experience. If you've ever been there, if you haven't, you should go and watch. It's amazing. Majestic is how I could describe the United States Supreme Court.
No, I hate to say it, the only time I've even saw anything remotely like the Supreme Court, which probably isn't, is off one of those stupid TV shows we were talking about.
But no, it really was, and there's a whole protocol that you must follow, and you have to say, Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court. And all I got out of my mouth was, may it please the court, and boom, they started asking me questions.
Wow.
Justice Sotomayor asked me a question, and then I think someone on this side, I don't know if it was Alito, and for 20 minutes I was back and forth, with just question after question after question. So much different than when you're trying a case and where you're in control of your argument and nobody's stopping you. Much different. It was really intense, but really an awesome experience.
No, that sounds incredibly cool. It really does. Were you struck by? Are they really brilliant people? Did you find that, or?
Oh, it's amazing. Of course, you're 9 justices, and it's intimidating. And the questions are really intelligent questions. But then you also notice the different personalities of these justices, and then based on their questioning, you could kind of figure out, well, maybe he's with me on this, maybe she's not. But they do a lot of the devil's advocate. They're asking you really tough questions, and they don't let up. And sometimes you're not even able to complete your sentence before another justice chimes in and asks you a question.
Wow.
So it really was quite intense, and a very intense 20 minutes.
Did you have to undergo any kind of certification in order to be able to present a case to the court?
Well, you do. You do have to be admitted to the Supreme Court bar, which I had done a couple years ago, so I'm admitted. But yeah, you do have to have that before you go in. But they do give you a very nice token, a little souvenir. They give you quill pens.
Wow.
Real quills, and so that's your, that's your souvenir for arguing before the United States Supreme Court.
Wow, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. So, well, I guess in light of the amazing campaign difficulty you're going to have in the primary, we've got, about, I need to wear glasses sometimes, about a minute and a half to go. So
Okay.
What would you like to cover?
I would just say the 3 years have been awesome. I can't believe it's been 3 years. It's gone so fast. And because I feel like we're just starting. We made some great new changes with new laws and some new initiatives. We have more. There's more to come. I feel that the work is far from being done.
Yeah.
That we do have a lot to do. We have some ideas for new legislation and that sort of thing. We're going to just continue to go, and it's an honor to represent all of you here in Cook County, and I want to continue to be your state's attorney.
And by the way, if for no other reason, well, actually, I think she's doing a really good job. One thing I've noticed about you in particular, and I've seen this before, but I didn't register. Also, the same thing with people like Sally and Dan. You're actually kind of like normal, real people. And no, really, I mean, you ought to see some of the posses I get here. Todd Stroger's crowd was unbelievable. And but you know what? Usually, if I look near somebody's eyes, okay, they'll look away. Mm-hmm. I mean, most politicians will anyway. Mm-hmm. You don't have that problem.
Yeah.
Probably because you're not lying. That helps.
My mother always told me I was a terrible liar, so I am a terrible liar.
So you don't.
I give you the truth, Avi.
No, that's very cool. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for being here, Anita Alvarez. Definitely strongly endorsed against major opposition for Democrat for state's attorney.
Thank you so much.
And I want to thank Dan Kirk and Sally Daly Hunt, who I like to Facebook with, like at all interesting hours, and everybody else who was involved in getting you here today. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Don't forget, Jewish Chicago is going to be coming out right before early voting. So it's going to be free all over the place, so don't miss your opportunity. Thanks to Sonny Hirsch. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.